Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk about the yoga value of contentment. So, contentment is feeling good about ourselves, whether we're flourishing or falling apart. So, it's accepting ourselves fully in both situations, when we're having a good time and when we feel like we're being successful or doing well and everything's going well. It's like, can we be kind of like self-soothing to ourselves when we're in a moment of struggle, or perhaps we're having a hard time and we feel like we don't like that part of ourselves that seems to feel shameful or embarrassed or stressed. And it's really noticing ourselves in that moment and learning to self-soothe, and some people use the words radically accept all of ourselves. So there is some science around self-compassion and how, the practice of learning to be compassionate to ourselves in these moments can actually make us really resilient and really happy and well in our life. So this is the first point. Feeling good about ourselves, whether we're flourishing or falling apart. So the second point about contentment. Contentment is not about being passive. So we can still pursue our goals while simultaneously be grateful for what we have. So it's not about just like sitting around on the couch and not really doing anything, just being content with eating, rations or burger rings. Like, contentment means you can still be happy in the present moment and still have those great aspirations. It's really good to have, a beautiful, positive vision for ourselves in the future. So our wonderful yogi tool that we can take on to develop more of this feeling of contentment is gratitude. So being really grateful for what we have and really being thankful for what we already have in our life is cultivating this feeling of contentment. So there's a researcher called Paul Dolan. He's a behavioural scientist at the London School of Economics, and he talks about this idea of just enough is a really good mindset to take on to feel contented. And so, rather than always be wanting more, he suggests, we can cultivate this feeling of completeness, or even sort of like unconditional wholeness. So our happiness isn't conditional on having more money or more clothes or a fancier car, or whatever it is that we sometimes get sucked into from all the messages on the media and social media. Sure, we need enough. So Paul Dolan talks about if you don't have enough to live, and those people that are struggling and in poverty, and my heart goes out to all those people who find it hard to have the basic needs. So that's also perhaps like a time of struggle. But a lot of us already have enough, but we want more. So it's cultivating this feeling of gratitude. And then we're not always grasping or clinging for more. So contentment is not necessarily about being passive. And it's also not necessarily like grasping for bigger goals. It's being content with what we've got. So that's the second point. And the third point I wanted to make is that it's easy to obsess about what still needs to be done. It's easy to obsess about what we've still got to do on our to-do list. If you're like me, I call myself a recovering high achiever. I definitely was on the treadmill a bit of, going to... I'm really grateful for my upbringing, by the way. I'm just talking to you so that you might understand. I'm talking to you in this way so you might understand this concept. So I went to, school, and then went to university to get a degree, to get a good job, and I got all of that. And then I was like, okay, what next? Now I need to save up for a house and da-da-da-da. And I think all of that made me feel like I always had to do more and I was always needing more. And I'm not saying that those things, you know, there's nothing wrong with having those things. And this kind of, you know, laps over to that video previously on non-attachment. It's just kind of like knowing that we need to bring in the yin with the yang. So for me, I just realized I needed to rest and recover, and yoga has helped me bring some more yin, if you like. So the yin is sort of more like being in stillness and going inwards. And so I like to talk about, you know, this idea of having our IRD card in one hand and our yoga values in the other hand. So it's not about, you know, just embracing the yoga values fully. I think in this modern day world we also need to pay our bills, and you know, there's some things we need to tend to. So it's like having it's like a dance between those two things, you know. It's not one or the other, it's not binary. It's balancing those two things in each hand, and just being aware when we might get a little bit out of balance, and coming back to the yoga studio to bring us back to our center. So yoga is a beautiful tool for helping us bring in some more of that inner calm and finding some clarity and not feeling so rushed in our life. So you notice when you might come into your yoga practice at the start, you feel like your mind's still busy, and then you know, by the end of the practice, after practicing yoga and mindfulness, you start to ease into being a little bit more present. So this is how yoga helps us. We cultivate an inner quality, an inner strength called mindful awareness. So what is mindful awareness? It's presence. And the way we do it in yoga is we focus on our breath, or the sensations in our body, those two things, the breath and the body. And when our mind wanders off into the future or into the past, which it can do, we notice that. We catch ourselves, and with kindness bring our awareness back to our breath or into the body. And just have a little talking to ourselves. That's right, it's okay to be just here in the now. And the more we practice bringing ourselves back to that breath, to the body, that's building the muscle of awareness. So this is how yoga helps us. And we're going to do some practices so you can start to feel what I mean by that. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Just to summarize, we talked about contentment is feeling good about ourselves, whether we're flourishing or falling apart. Contentment is not about being passive. And it's easy to obsess about what still needs to be done. And so it's good to think about the tools that help us with that. So practicing gratitude and yoga and practicing mindful awareness. These are very powerful tools which have been scientifically proven as well to cultivate more inner contentment and inner peace. And so I leave you with this last thought. Perhaps it's more useful to pursue contentment rather than happiness. Maybe is contentment a more sustainable way of finding inner peace and inner calm? Thank you for listening. I'll see you on the next video.